Hello, I'm Dr. Mikey Mewborn, and this is Church Ministry. Today we're looking at the topic, the reproducer. It's so important in organizations for people to reproduce themselves. Maybe you've heard the phrase before, you need to work yourself out of a job. Well, what that simply means is that you're teaching someone and leading someone and guiding someone to take over your position when you leave or you are promoted. And that's important when you think about leadership. So we should always be reproducing ourselves and bettering the people around us. And I think sometimes when we do this correctly, we can't but help see our organization just thrive and do very well. So we're going to look at a few of those things. But in order to be a reproducer, you have to be someone who's doing it correctly. And so we're going to look at that as well in our study. It's good to be with you. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to Church Ministry. Today we're looking at the topic, the reproducer. Our outline notes are from Kenneth Gaingold in his book, Team Leadership. It's good to be with you. Let's begin our study. I want to give you some initial thoughts about the reproducer, and we get those from James Kouzes and Barry Posner. They say in their book, leadership is a reciprocal relationship between those who choose to lead and those who decide to follow. It's wonderful to understand in leadership and trying to reproduce oneself, there has to be a true connection. There has to be a true relationship between someone who has decided to lead and one who has decided to follow. And what does that look like? And I think a great picture of that is a picture of a bunch of cows. And you might say, what is this about? Well, there's a lead cow in every herd, most likely. And a lot of farmers or a lot of ranchers, sometimes they call them cow farmers, sometimes they call them cow ranchers, but they seek to find a lead cow, especially if they're an open range type of thing and setting. And so they find the lead cow. And what that lead cow does is that lead cow has already made the decision in her mind that she is going to pretty much lead the group. And the other cows understand that as well. And when the herd realizes this, that she is the lead cow, then they just simply follow her. It's amazing the way it works out. And in most cases, for the lead cow, they put a bell around her neck. The point of that is not for the other cows to hear the ringing. The point of it is to let the farmer know or the rancher know where she is in all of that. And so it's incredible because they know, they have a sense of understanding where she is. So they're going to follow as she leads. So it's almost like a hidden agreement between the lead cow and the rest of the herd saying, we're going to go this direction and we're following her. I think that's kind of neat when you look at this in the big scheme of things. Now, understand the reproducer, we're going to definitely look at Paul and Timothy, and there's a picture of Paul and young Timothy there. In 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, it reads, "You then, my child, be strengthened by the grace that is in Christ Jesus, and what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses entrust to faithful men, who will be able to teach others also. Share in suffering as a good soldier of Christ Jesus." One of the wonderful things about the Apostle Paul is that when he asked Timothy to come with him and to be a part of ministry with him, he was saying, I'm going to take the lead role. I want you to come and learn from me. And he did, and that's exactly what happened. We see later on in Paul's life, he says things such as this, "Imitate me, just as I also imitate Christ." He's saying that he's going a certain direction. You need to come with me. You need to do what I do. You need to follow in these footsteps. And I love the idea of footprints in the sand. There's a song as well as a poem, as well as a saying. May the footprints that we leave lead them to believe. In this idea, the footprints that we leave behind are footprints, imagine, in the sand, and they're leading people to Jesus. And so if somebody was to step in your footprints, would that lead them to Jesus? And I think that's a wonderful way to look at this topic. Now, when we're understanding the reproducer, we have to also understand the climate, or establishing the climate. There are biblical guidelines upon which there's a leader and a follower. There's biblical guidelines in the way that we hand that down. All throughout the Bible, there's the teaching of the master teacher. Jesus Christ is called the master teacher. And in that, the student can never be above the teacher. So the teacher has to teach well and express that. But there has to be biblical guidelines for the way that that we ask people to be reproduced or reproduce what we're doing if we're the leader in that case. There has to be a team spirit involved as well, that people are on the same team, going the same direction. It's not the person who's the master and then the person who is the slave. It's nothing like that. It's that a team spirit. We're working together at this. You can't really be a leader unless you have followers anyways. Decentralization. Think about the idea of making sure people are going the direction they should go. People need to understand their responsibilities, the goal achievements, and so you have to kind of take the focus sometimes off of a certain area so that they can kind of see what we're trying to do here. This isn't just the end-all be-all. We're saying there's more to it, and keeping them in their place is going to be helpful. So they don't need to come into a position where they're above or out of place where they shouldn't be, because when they get out of position, they start either leading and possibly leading in the wrong way, or they find themselves just kind of chaotic, or they find themselves a little bit unsure what to do, and then they begin to make mistakes. And so we have to be careful about those things. Delegation. Got to learn how to delegate. The reproducer learns how to delegate, giving somebody else a task that is good for them that they might be really good at, but at the same time, it will also alleviate some of the things that the reproducer or the leader or even the chairperson or manager or whoever it might be, that person, it alleviates them from some of the job duties that can bog down what they do. And you see that in Acts chapter 6, where they delegated the task of taking care of widows there in that passage. And then purpose and direction. Learn to live in the present. This is not just for a select group of people per se. It's that we need to learn to live in the present and know what the direction is today, know what the purpose is today, and as we move, it'll make all the sense in the world. It's the idea that you see in this picture. You have a leader who's moving along, and he's going down this path. You notice everybody's kind of going this path with him, but then there's going to be a point where they split off a little bit and they can take care of more area. And so you can see that by establishing the climate. Establish the setting where you are. And when you establish that setting, then you have something to show for it. Then you're actually moving forward and everybody's going the same direction. And this is very helpful when understanding the reproducer. As we continue on, we need to consider the issues, or considering the issues, leadership style. Luke 6:40, a disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher. I think that's good when you think about it. They're not above, but when they're fully trained, when they're mature, when they understand, they will be like their teacher. And that's just a great way to look at it. Then there's essential maturity, lifelong learner. People need to be lifelong learners. This is the great indicator that someone is maturing or they are mature. They realize they are a lifelong learner. There's so many things that they need to get and need to take into their minds and then, of course, put into their behavior. Spiritual maturity is practiced theology. This is wonderful, especially since we're talking about church ministry, talking about some form of church leadership, some form of nonprofit organizational leadership, those types of things. It matters what we believe. And so spiritual maturity is the person who understands what is right and what is wrong and goes in the way that's what is right. That is true practice theology. What is theology if it's not practiced? So there's two ways of thinking about this. You have your orthodoxy and your orthopraxy. Your orthodoxy is right thinking. Your orthopraxy is right acting or right living. And so they have to be together. If they're not, then you really don't have what's called practical theology. You're not living out your faith. You need to be able to do that in your area of leadership. I love this quote by Charles Spurgeon. Discernment is not a matter of telling the difference between right and wrong. Rather, it's telling the difference between right and almost right. This is when you know a person they understand maturity or they've developed into a mature Christian. It's not just the idea of understanding the difference between right and wrong, because a lot of times it's a big chasm. You can see that. It's obvious. It's right in front of you. And you know what's evil and sinful in a dark way. And then you can know what's right and good and holy in such a godly way. It's almost like light versus dark, right? You know the difference between the two. But he makes a great case here. There's a bigger difference between understanding what is right and almost right. There's a bigger difference there than there is just understanding what's right versus wrong. Okay? I think that's a great quote for us. Considering the issues, necessity of credibility, is my behavior predictable or erratic? I think that matters when you're trying to build credibility. Do people know how I think? Oh, well, Dr. Mewborn would do this in this case. I know he would because I know his character. I know him. I know his reputation. And so that's really good. If people are predictable, that's very good. Do I communicate clearly or carelessly? Am I intentional about my words? Do I think before I speak? That matters. Do I treat promises seriously or lightly? When I tell somebody I'm going to do something, do I follow through with it? Do I keep my word? Am I a person of integrity? Am I forthright or dishonest? So am I coming at this thing in the right way and putting all truth out there at the beginning? Or do I hide things so I can get something and being dishonest about that? We need to work on building credibility in our lives. And these are some of the ways that you do that. You got to build it. People really do not care to work with people that are not honest. They don't know what to trust them with. They don't know where they can go from there. Someone that communicates clearly is much easier to work with than someone that you just never know. What do? You read their mind or something like that? Of course, that's difficult. So we can't really do that. And so these are things we need to work on, building our credibility. Here's another picture again, Paul and Timothy. And I want you to see when he meets Timothy in Acts 16. Paul came also to Derbe and to Lystra. A disciple was there named Timothy. Verse 2, he was well spoken of by the brothers at Lystra and Iconium. I love that he was well spoken of by the brothers in two cities. That means he has an incredible reputation. He's got credibility that everybody knows about. He's got it. And they trust him. And so Paul sees that and he says, I trust you too. He says, come with me. We also see in 2 Timothy 1:5, I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother, Lois, and your mother Eunice, and now I am sure dwells in you as well. He's saying because of your family, because of what I see, because of the people that I know, and the ones I trust, I can trust you. And it's wonderful when you think about the people that are around you. They can say the most about you, and if they trust you, it's probably a good chance you'll be able to trust them as well. The next one is uniqueness of women's leadership. I thought this was a wonderful portion of this chapter, and I think it's just awesome when you think about this. Transformational leaders aim to enhance the motivation, morale, and job performance of followers by working with teams to identify needed change, to create a shared vision, to guide through inspiration. What I love about this portion is that many women in their leadership styles, and a lot of statistics about this in different books, but what's so great is they believe in a transformational type of leadership, not like a transactional leadership. I do something, I get something for it, but they believe in motivating people, morale and job performance, those types of things, and helping people see where they are. And this is very helpful when you're thinking about women in leadership and what this means. Very important topic there, transformational leadership. Going on, women in leadership, strategies for transformational leadership, development over goals is a focus there. Don't be transactional. Leverage your gender, banning bossy, strength-based tasks, and over-communicate. What it's saying there is that women have done a really strong job in these areas. This is the strength of women in leadership, and it has been for years. And so I think that's it's pretty appropriate putting this into this week's lesson. And then emphasizing the basics. We have competence, creativity, vision, empowerment. These four things are the basics of leadership. You got to have somebody that knows what they're doing. You got to have creativity. You got to have a vision. You got to have that empowerment where you empower people to do what they're good at. And so when you have that, you got something very strong. Some of the greatest leaders in the world today are known as coaches. Some of the greatest in the world. And I think one of the greatest coaches of all times was Vince Lombardi. Vince Lombardi started out a season by holding up a game ball and slowly saying, "Gentlemen, this is a football." Do you know what Vince Lombardi's doing there? He's emphasizing the basics. These are the fundamentals. This is how we start. You might have learned things throughout your whole life, but we might be relearning everything now that I'm your coach. And so that person who's a reproducer, he's reproducing what it really means to be a great football player. But in order to do that, in order to reproduce his mindset, in order to reproduce that, he truly has to be a person who's competent, creative, visionary, and also a person of empowerment. And if he's not, he is going to struggle. But Vince Lombardi did not struggle, did very, very well as a football coach. Okay? Well, this has been our study on the reproducer. Good to be with you today. Hope you have a great rest of the day. God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. All right, that concludes our study on the reproducer. I hope you paid attention to a few things that I think are very beneficial. One of those things is building credibility. It's knowing who you are, whose you are, and are you living life the way God has intended for you to live it. The Apostle Paul said to those who he wrote to, "Imitate me as I imitate Christ." I think that's important when we think about reproducing people ourselves. It's pouring into other people and letting them see that we are following Christ with all that we have. We are implementing the leadership skills that God has given us through the Word of God. And as we do that, we're saying, "Follow me," or "Do as I do because I'm following Christ." I think that's helpful when we're looking at the whole realm of being the reproducer. All right. It's good to be with you today. God bless you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.